on the corner of Bremner Avenue and Lakeshore Boulevard, where the morning fog still clung to the water, and the city of Toronto had not yet decided to wake up, a woman named Folake sat on an upturned crate and repaired a stranger's boot. She worked with one hand. The left one was gone just below the elbow, taken by an accident she rarely spoke about and never explained to people she had just met. What remained was a forearm that ended in a clean, healed scar and the quiet dignity of someone who had made peace with what could not be changed. Her right hand, though, moved the way a musician's hand moves, certain, unhurried, pressing the awl through the leather with a steadiness that came from years of practice and a refusal to do anything halfway. She had been there since 5 in the morning. She was always there since 5 in the morning. Folake's little setup was modest. A wooden board across 2 milk crates, a tin of wax, brushes sorted by size, needles, thread, and a few pairs of shoes left the evening before by people who trusted she would still be there when they returned. A handwritten sign taped to the front of the board read, "Shoe repairs, fair prices, ask Folake." The letters were even and careful. She had written it herself. She was 29 years old. She had once been a textile design student at Ryerson, 2 semesters away from finishing her degree. That was before the van ran the red light on Dundas Street, before the hospital, before she learned that the world does not pause for your grief, and neither do landlords, nor tuition offices, nor the aunt who had promised to help and then changed her phone number. Folake did not talk about those years often. She had learned that people wanted either too little of the story or too much of it, and she had no patience for either. What she had patience for was leather, the way it gave and resisted, the way a worn sole, if treated properly, could be made to last another 2 years. She found a kind of honesty in that, in things that showed exactly how much they had been used, and in the possibility of making them whole again. The city moved around her, cyclists in helmets, a woman walking 3 dogs who kept tangling around each other, a delivery truck reversing slowly, beeping, the driver hanging out the window to see where he was going. The light over the lake turned from grey to the pale gold that Toronto does in late September, when the summer finally lets go and the air takes on a crispness that feels like a fresh start, whether or not one has been earned. At 7:43, a black car stopped at the corner. Not parked, stopped, right there in the middle of the lane, with the hazards blinking slowly because something had happened to the front tire. A flat. You could hear it the moment the car eased to the curb, that low, unhappy grinding sound of a rim on asphalt. The door opened and a man stepped out. He was wearing a grey suit that fit the way suits only fit when someone has been measured for them specifically. He looked at the tire. He looked at his watch. He said something under his breath that Folake could not hear but could guess from the expression on his face. His name was Adebowale Mensah, Bowa to everyone who had known him longer than a business meeting. He was 36 years old, the chief medical officer of Meridian Health Partners, a private hospital group with 4 facilities across the Greater Toronto area. He was, by every external measure, a man who had his life arranged precisely the way he intended it to be arranged. He was also, at this particular moment, standing on Bremner Avenue with a flat tire, a 7 o'clock board meeting already underway without him, and no idea how to change a tire himself, because he had never needed to know. He called his assistant. She was already trying to reach roadside assistance, she said, but the wait time was 45 minutes. Bowa stood on the sidewalk and pressed his fingers to his temple. Folake had been watching this unfold the way she watched most things on this corner, without judgment, without urgency, just attention. She noticed the car first, then the man, then the way he stood after the phone call, very still, like someone recalculating something important. She said, without looking up from the boot she was finishing, "There's a Canadian Tire on Reese Street, 10-minute walk. They open at 7. He turned. He had not noticed her there. "Sorry?" She looked up then. "For the tire, if you don't want to wait 45 minutes. Bowa blinked. He looked at his phone, looked at her, looked at the car. "I have a meeting." "I know," Folake said. "You've checked your watch 4 times in the past 2 minutes. He did not seem to know what to say to that. Most people, she had found, were unused to being observed clearly by someone they assumed was not really looking. He walked over. Not because he had decided to exactly, but because his feet moved in her direction while his mind was still catching up. He looked at the shoe she was working on, a men's Oxford, brown, the sole coming away at the heel, her needle drawing the thread through in long, even stitches. "You do this every day?" he asked. "Every day the weather allows," Folake said, "and some days it doesn't." He was quiet for a moment, then, "How do you?" He stopped himself. She could see him realize, halfway through the question, that it was not the right question to ask someone you had just met. "With practice," she said, and let him off the hook, because she was not unkind, even when people were clumsy. She told him about the Canadian Tire. She told him which street to turn on, and that the service entrance was around the side, not the front, and that if he called ahead they would sometimes bring a mechanic out for a faster assessment. He thanked her. He actually stopped and thanked her, not the half-thank that people give when they are already walking away, but a real one, standing still, looking at her. "Bowa," he said, extending his hand. "Folake," she said, and shook it. He left. She went back to the boot. The city continued its morning. He came back at 6 in the evening. She was packing up, wax tins back in the bag, brushes wrapped in their cloth, the crate folded flat. She almost did not recognize him without the suit jacket, which was folded over his arm now, his sleeves rolled to the elbows. He had been in a long day. You could see it in the way he was walking. He was carrying a coffee, one of those paper cups from the cafe around the corner that stayed open late, and he held it out to her. "I made the meeting," he said. "Barely, but I made it." Folake looked at the coffee, then at him. "You came back to tell me that? I came back to say thank you properly." He set the coffee down on the board since her hands were full. "The mechanic said I had a nail in the tire from at least a week ago. It held until it didn't." She picked up the coffee. It was still warm. She thought it was an odd thing, to receive warmth on an autumn evening from a stranger you had given 10 seconds of directions to that morning, and she thought about whether she should be suspicious of it, and decided she was too tired for suspicion and too cold not to drink it. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I know," Bowa said. "I wanted to." He asked her name again, not because he had forgotten it, she could tell, but because he was the kind of person who made sure, who did not assume the thing he remembered was the thing he had. She told him again. He asked how long she had been working this corner. She told him 3 years. He asked if she did it alone. She said yes. She did not tell him about the degree she had not finished, or the accident, or the aunt. Those were not first-day things. Those were not even second-day things, for most people. She finished her coffee. He said goodnight. He left again, and she watched him go, and she thought, that is someone who was raised to come back. He came back again on Thursday, then the following Monday. Then, without either of them deciding it was a habit, it became a habit. He would stop by in the mornings, sometimes with coffee, sometimes without, and talk for 5 or 10 minutes before his driver continued downtown. He asked her real questions, not the performative kind, not the kind that were actually just people waiting for their turn to talk, but questions that waited for the actual answer. He asked what she was repairing. He asked why she used wax instead of polish on a particular type of leather. He asked where she had learned. One morning in October, she was working on a pair of women's heels, sky blue, one strap detached at the buckle. She was holding the shoe steady against her knee, the awl in her right hand, the strap pressed flat by the edge of her forearm, threading the needle through with a patience that made it look easy when it was not. Bowa watched her for a moment and said, "You designed this repair, didn't you? You didn't just fix it, you improved it." She looked up. The original buckle placement was wrong. It was always going to pull loose, so you moved it. 2 millimeters, she said. The owner won't notice. The shoe won't fail again. He was quiet for a moment, the way he was quiet when he was actually thinking rather than just pausing. Then he said, "You studied design." It was not a question. Folake set the shoe down. She looked at him steadily. "Textile design," she said. "Rixest. Ryson." I didn't finish. She did not say anything more. He did not push. He picked up his coffee and said, "The heel work on these is extraordinary, I mean that." She had not been told in a long time that something she made was extraordinary. She had been told she was capable, practical, clever with her hands. Those were fine things, but extraordinary was different. Extraordinary meant something that could not have been done by just anyone. She did not cry, but she came close. November arrived and brought with it the particular cruelty of Toronto in early winter. Not cold enough to justify staying inside, too cold to pretend you were comfortable. Folake had a good coat and fingerless gloves and a small kerosene heater that she was not sure was entirely legal at an outdoor setup, but which she had used for 2 winters without incident. One morning, the heater did not light. She tried 4 times. She checked the fuel level. She tried again. Nothing. She sat down on the crate and looked at the shoes waiting on her board. 6 pairs, all of them promised back by end of day. And she thought about what she was going to do about the cold and also about her hands. Because her hands were the thing. Her hands were everything. And she could not work properly if she could not feel her fingers. She had been sitting there for about 10 minutes when Bowa's car pulled up. He stepped out. He saw her face. He did not ask what was wrong. He looked at the heater and then at the shoes on the board, and then he said, "Come sit in the car while I look at this." She started to object and he said, quietly, not unkindly, "Folake, please." She sat in the car. It was warm. She had forgotten temporarily what warm felt like, the specific relief of it, the way your muscles unclench when they stop bracing. He got the heater lit in 11 minutes. She had no idea how. He had looked it up on his phone while she was sitting in the car, found a video, followed the steps. He knocked on the window and held up the heater, and it was burning blue and steady. She got out. She said thank you. She said it plainly, without qualification, because some things do not need to be made smaller. He said, "My mother had one like this, growing up." It was the first time he had mentioned his mother. Folake filed that away the way she filed things that mattered, quietly, without drawing attention to it. In December, one of Bowa's senior colleagues saw him at Folake's corner. Dr. Harrington, 50s, silver hair, the particular kind of old money certainty that makes people speak in full sentences even when they are being rude, was walking past on his way to a breakfast at the Shangri-La, when he stopped and watched Bowa crouched at the wooden board, looking at a pair of dress shoes Folake had just finished. Harrington waited until Bowa had walked to meet him on the sidewalk, and then said with a careful smile, "Interesting place to start your morning." Bowa looked at him. "She does extraordinary work." "I'm sure she does," Harrington said. The careful smile stayed exactly where it was. Bowa held that look for a long moment. Then he said, "If you need shoes repaired, I'd recommend her." And he got into his car. He told Folake about it that afternoon. He told her without editorializing, just the exchange plainly as it had happened. She listened. She said, "People like that, they don't mean harm exactly. They just can't see past the corner." "You're not the corner," Bowa said. She looked at him. He looked back. Something shifted in the air between them, the way temperature shifts when a door opens somewhere far down a corridor. You feel it before you understand it. "No," Folake said after a moment. "I'm not." She told him about the accident on a cold afternoon in January, not because he had asked. He had still not asked, after 3 months, not because she had decided it was time in any calculated way, but because he had said something about his own losses that morning. His father, who had died the year he finished medical school, 2 weeks before convocation, who had never seen him become what he became, and the honesty of it had opened something in her. She told him about the van, the red light, the way she had looked up and had only a second, not even a full second, to understand what was. She told him about waking up in Sunnybrook and knowing, before she looked, somehow knowing that things were different in a way that could not be corrected. She told him about the months that followed and the degree she could not finish, and the shame she had carried that was not hers to carry, but that she had carried anyway, for years. He did not say "I'm sorry" immediately, which was the thing she had always dreaded most, that reflex apology, that word that closes the door. He sat with it first. He let it be real. Then he said, "Thank you for telling me." She nodded. She looked out at the lake, which was grey and enormous and completely indifferent, the way large bodies of water always are, and somehow that indifference was a comfort. "The shoes," he said eventually. "Do you want to design them? Not just repair them?" She turned to look at him. "Ryerson has a continuing education program," he said, "and there are fellowships for students whose programs were interrupted." He said it carefully, not as a gift being given, but as information being shared. The way you tell someone a door exists without grabbing their hand and dragging them through it. I've looked into it, Folake said. And the portfolio requirements are significant, and I haven't made anything new in. She stopped. A long time. You make new things every day, Bowa said. I watch you. She said nothing. The lake went on being grey and enormous. I'm not telling you what to do, he said. I'm telling you what I see. She submitted the portfolio in March. She worked on it for 6 weeks, every evening after packing up the corner, at the kitchen table in the apartment. She shared with her friend Temmie on Parkdale. She designed 3 pieces, a reconstructed Oxford with the sole reinforced in a way her textile training and her 3 years of repair work had taught her to do, a women's boot with the ankle strap repositioned for actual structural integrity, and a flat sandal, elegant and simple, built for a person with one hand to put on and take off without assistance. That last one she had not planned. It came out of a morning when she was annoyed at a sandal a customer had brought in that was beautiful but useless, and she had thought, I could do this better. So she did. She sent the portfolio in and told no one except Temmie and Bowa. Bowa said, Tell me when you hear. She said, I might not get in. He said, Tell me when you hear. She heard on a Thursday morning in April. She was at the corner. The city was thawing. That extraordinary Toronto spring thaw when the ice goes out of the lake, and the light comes back like something that has been away and is glad to return. She was reading the email on her phone, her right hand holding the screen, the morning sun making it hard to see, and she read it twice to be sure. She had been accepted to the fashion and textile design program. Full entry. Beginning in September. She sat very still on the crate. A woman walked by with a stroller. A streetcar rang its bell somewhere on Queen Street. Across the water, the city of Toronto went on being exactly itself. Enormous and indifferent, and today, briefly, perfect, Folake called Bowa. He picked up on the second ring. She said, I got in. On his end, she heard him stop walking, a small pause, a breath, and then he said, Folake, just her name. The way you say a name when you have been hoping for something for a long time and it has finally arrived. They met that evening at a restaurant on King Street that was nice without being the kind of nice that makes you sit up straight. They ate jollof, rice, and fried plantain and talked for 3 hours. He told her about the day his father died, the whole story this time, not just the outline. She told him about the first shoe she had ever fixed, in the second week after the accident, when the occupational therapist had brought in an old loafer and a needle and thread almost as a joke, and how it had not been a joke at all, how it had been the first moment she had felt like herself. He said, I think you've been designing all along. You just didn't have the right word for it. She thought about that for a long time. Maybe, she said, or maybe the corner was where I needed to be, to learn what I needed to learn. He reached across the table and put his hand over hers. She looked at it. She looked at him. She did not pull away. The following September, Folake walked into the Ryerson building, the Design Exchange Annex, the one with the big windows, with a portfolio case under her arm, and a pair of shoes she had made herself on her feet. They were brown leather, a mid-heel, the left one modified at the buckle the way she had learned to modify things, 2 millimeters off from where anyone would think to put it, and exactly right. Bowa was waiting outside when she came out 3 hours later. He had taken the afternoon off work. She had not asked him to. He had not told her he would. She came through the door and she saw him and she stopped walking. He lifted his chin slightly. Well, she said, it's real. It's actually starting. He crossed the sidewalk. He did not say the right thing or the perfect thing. He said, I know. I knew. And Folake, who had sat on a crate on a cold corner for 3 years and repaired other people's broken things with patience and precision in one hand, and who had carried a grief that had not been hers to carry, and who had waited, not for rescue, but for the moment when she could simply begin, stood on that sidewalk in September and felt, for the first time in a long time, that the ground beneath her was steady, not because someone had given her something, because she had built it herself and he had seen it, and knowing that made all the difference.